Hello and welcome back to VGC Guides, the show where I take a Pokemon and break down how to use it so you don't have to. Once again, these guides are VGC focused, and so some of what I say may not translate to Smogon singles. That being said, we're talking about the second Pokemon to get banned from Generation 9 OU, Houndstone. This Pokemon got banned 3 days after the game came out because one of its moves in particular is just absolutely oppressive in singles. So will this dog from the dead terrorize VGC the way it terrorized OU, or will it get to silently sleep in the graveyards where they are known to inhabit? Alright, today we're talking about Houndstone, the ghost dog Pokemon, and I think that's something we can all see. I don't think we needed a Pokedex entry to tell us that. Now, I want to talk about, obviously, ghost typing. I talked about this yesterday in the Annihilate video. It's really great offensive typing, right? You are only super effective into 2 types, but you have neutral damage into almost every type in the game, except Dark, who resists you, and Normal, who is immune. Which is fine, because we'll talk about those 2 types in a minute, right? Now, Ghost defensively also isn't all that great. You only have 2 weaknesses in yourself and Dark, which, again, I talked about briefly in the Annihilate video, with Ghost type being able to check Ghost types and having fighting coverage or fairy coverage being able to check your Dark type weakness. Hint, hint. And so, Ghost typing, great. Let's talk about this thing's abilities. Technically, both of its abilities are actually quite usable. For the most part, everybody's talking about this thing's Sand Rush ability because being able to make a Mon double speed. This Mon specifically double speed is very good. Although also having this Mon, having Fluffy, also has its uses, which we'll talk about when we get into the sets, right? Now, unfortunately, this will come into play later. Unfortunately, Fluffy only halves the damage taken from direct contact, not doubling your defense. Which is a bit unfortunate for something we'll talk about in a minute, but it's still useful, right? Like, you can take, like, Dark type sucker punches from, what was that one? King Gambit? Yeah, King Gambit, Bisharp's Evolution. Like, you can take sucker punches from that. You can take, like with Fluffy, you can take a lot of physical attacks that you have no real business taking, right? As long as they're not fire type. So moving on, again, great offensive typing, 2 really good abilities. Let's move on to this thing's stats. First of all, 72 HP, 100 defense, 97 special defense. I like how Game Freak is slowly breaking away from the idea that ghost types don't have a lot of HP. We'll talk about, I don't even know what that thing is called. It's like Flutter Mane or something like that. Where is it? Yeah, Flutter Mane. We'll talk about that later, but they're slowly breaking away from the stigma that ghost types will have low HP. As this thing has 72 HP, 100 defense, and 97 special defense. That's good bulk, actually. Like, I'd be happy with this bulk on a Mon, right? Now, 101 attack isn't anything amazing, but when you consider that you can, like, Terrastallize into Ghost and gives your Ghost stabs, like, 2 times boost off of 101 base attack, it kind of makes up for it. You won't ever be using this thing's special attack for actual damage purposes. It does have, like, a special move that you would run on it, but other than that one special move, like, you're not using that special move for damage ever. Now, 68 speed is actually really important here because 68 speed is that perfect middle ground between 55 to 60 and 75 to 80, where, like, it works really well on Tail Room strats. Now, for those of you that don't know, Tail Room is Tailwind plus Trick Room teams, right? You have, like, 3 fast Mons, 3 slow Mons, and you bring 3 of one side or 3 of the other side, and then 1. It depends on the matchup, of course, but basically you have 2 different modes that you can play with. You can play fast or you can play slow, and if you see that your opponent has Tailwind, you just run Trick Room. If you see that your opponent has no speed control and Mons at varying speeds, you run Tailwind. If you see that your opponent has Trick Room, you also run Trick Room, but you try to counter their Trick Room without running your own Tailwind, right? That's kind of the gist of Tail Room. It's a very fun strategy. You saw it a lot in 2018 with, like, it wasn't Tail Room back then, it was more Sun Room with Venusaur and Torkoal and Hatterene and Indeedee and 2 other fast ones like Dragapult, something else or whatever. Like, you saw it a lot in 2020. Did I say 2018? If I said 2018 at all, I feel like I did. If I said 2018, I meant 2020 and 2021. Disregard if I said the wrong year. So, really great stats, right? You have, like, the Tail Room speed. Because with 68 base speed, you are going to be slower than fast Mons, but faster than slow Mons. You're literally right in that perfect middle point for Tail Room to work. So now let's talk about this thing's moves. And we will come back to this move in a minute. I know that's the move everybody wants to talk about, but we'll come back to this move in a minute. Going to this thing's moveset, like, if setup ever becomes really good in this metagame, like, you have Roar and Fluffy, you could realistically phase mons out that are setting up in your face, or have set up in your face, and you have the bulk to take it, right? You get Dig. I don't recommend using Dig. It's just worse Phantom Force. You get Crunch, but you have Ghost Stab already, and Crunch really isn't great when you have Ghost Stab, because you're hitting the same types for super effective, and you have an extra, like, Crunch has 2 extra resists in Fighting and Fairy, whereas Ghost doesn't. You do have Play Rough, which is, I mentioned this earlier, with Ghost only being weak to, with Ghost only being weak to Dark and Ghost, you counter your Dark weakness with Play Rough, which is a very good option on this Pokemon. And then obviously your Ghost type counters your Ghost weakness. You do have Helping Hand, a really great support move if you want to run Helping Hand on like a slow, bulky version of the set. You have Phantom Force, and I've talked about Phantom Force in the Annihilate video. It's, again, it's a great move on paper. You're invulnerable for a turn and you break through Protect. It's like, it's Dig and Fly, but better because they can't protect in front of it. But again, like, in practice it's not great, because when you come out of it, if like they know you're slower, or if the opponent knows that their Pokemon is slower, it's a free target, right? Charm, really great support move on like the fast support sets. As far as the TM attacks go, like, I already talked about Charm. Scary Face, also really great support move on like the fast sets. You could run it on the slow sets too if you wanted to. Protect, which I'm going to stop talking about Protect because almost every mon gets it, and if a mon doesn't get Protect, I will bring it up and how it is a hindrance, right? So for now, just assume if it has Protect, great move, right? You have the Elemental Fangs, which is like okay, but like it's a 10% chance to flinch your Burn, 10% chance to flinch your Para, 10% chance to flinch your Freeze. That's not a great chance, and you even have like a 5% chance to miss off of really low base power. If you want to run a Fire or Lightning or Ice type move, you can just run Terra Blast. It'll have an extra 15 base power, and you'll have Stab on it. Moving on, like, you get Bulldoze for speed control if you want to run like a fast Bulldoze set into like, aside like a Clear Body Pokemon maybe. Like, I'm not sure which Pokemon get Clear Body this generation. So your Clear Body Pokemon, like Garganacl, but it doesn't have the speed to run something like that. Dragapult, so like, your Clear Body Pokemon this gen aren't technically all that great, but you could technically run it alongside like Clear Body or Pokemon. Yeah, I don't know. Any other Pokemon that can't have its stats lowered, you could run it. Ooh, actually. You could actually run that alongside like Tyranitar with Clear Amulet. So you get the speed to double Houndstone, or you get the Sand to double Houndstone speed. You Bulldoze, your Tyranitar's Clear Amulet. It's possible. Like, it'd be weird, right? Or you just run next to a Flying type. But Bulldoze, it's an option if you want like an offensive speed control version, or like an attacking speed control version if you don't want to run Scary Face. Moving on, the only Dark type move you would actually run on this mon is Snarl to lower special attack. And again, like, if you're using Snarl almost at all, like except in Yveltal's case, if you're using Snarl, you're using it for support, not for damage. And so coming off of a 50 base special attack, it's really not that big of a deal, right? You could also use Mudshot for speed control, but if it's a 95% accurate speed control, I'd actually rather just use Bulldoze or Scary Face in that matter than have to rely on Mudshot. You get Nightshade, which is like, okay. It's a decent move. Like, you could use it on this mon if you really wanted to. I don't recommend it. You do get Manual Sandstorm if you want to set your own sand. You get Psychic Fangs. Again, if it becomes a screen-heavy metagame, you could technically run Psychic Fangs to catch people off guard, the same way people would run Brick Break on random mons like Alolan Marowak in 2017. You get Stomping Tantrum for ground coverage, which is useful if you want to hit like Steel types. But there's no real reason to run Stomping Tantrum to hit like Steel types when you have Body Press. And this is what I want to talk about. This is why Fluffy not doubling your defense in general is really unfortunate, because this mon gets Body Press. If Fluffy doubled your defensive stat instead of having contact moves, Body Press would have been insane. Sorry, 1 second. Body Press would have been insane. Don't get me wrong, like, off of 100 base defense and the ability to Terra into fight, it's still a really insane move. And again, it counters your dark weakness the same way like Annihilate counters its dark weakness. Annihilate's not weak to dark, but you get the point. Like the same way like Annihilate would counter a dark weakness, like ghost types having fighting type coverage is really great for countering their dark weakness, right? You get sub, which can be used on offensive sets. You get Will-O-Wisp, another really great support move. We already talked about crunch. You could run trick on like a scarf set or an iron ball set and basically just be like non-prankster trick Grimmsnarl with iron ball. Or you could like get trick a choice stardom. Not as common in VGC. It's more of a single strat because it's more like hindering in singles. But like it definitely shows up in VGC every so often. You get Helping Hand. I may have talked about Helping Hand earlier. It may have been another level up learn set. I'm not sure. But you get Helping Hand. It's great if you want to run a slow support set. Again, play rough to counter your ghost or counter your dark weakness if you don't want to run like a max defense set like body press. Then your egg moves like Disable and Destiny Bond and Memento are like okay. In general, like sacking a Mon to lower stats is not great, and potentially sacking a Mon to kill off another Mon is a little bit better, but I'd rather just KO the opponent's Mon. Now Yawn is actually really good, right? Everybody remembers Yawn Gastrodon spam in 2022, as well as Yawn Torkoal spam in 2020 and 2021. So Yawn is kind of a big deal in this Mon, right? Especially on like the bulkier sets. Okay, I'm chilling. You get Shadow Sneak as well if you want like fast chip damage to knock out the last few HP of a Pokemon that you didn't quite kill. And then Ally Switch. Yes. Ally Switch technically works. But it doesn't, because all it does is force 50-50s on you and your opponents. Because on your end, it's, does he predict the Ally Switch this time or does he not? Right, it's not good for either player. It's not good for the person using it. It's not good for the person who's not using it. Just don't. Ally Switch is bad and cringe, and just don't. Save yourself the trouble and the disrespect, right? And so now we'll talk about this move that everybody's talking about, right? Last Respects. Amazing move in singles, right? You take a sack. 50 base power itself isn't great. But for every fainted Mon on your team, it gets an extra 50 base power, right? So after you lose one Mon, it is a 100 base power ghost type move that does not miss and has 0 drawbacks. After you lose 2 Mons, it is a 150 base power move, and so on and so forth. Now in singles, when you have taken 5 sacks and this thing is sitting with a Choice Scarf in the back to clean up, you have a 300 base power ghost type move coming off of 101 physical attack. Potentially, boosted by Choice Scarf, right? Which is speed, but you get the point. This will like one-hit KO most neutral targets that aren't bulky. It will come very close to OHKOing neutral Mons that have chip. Like bulky neutral Mons that have chip. Resisting Mons that are like non-bulky resists will faint. Bulky resists are 2-hit KO'd at best, right? At best, at worst, you get the point. Like it is at most a 2-hit KO on like bulky resist at 300 base power. Is that as broken in doubles? No. Because in VGC we only play with 4 Pokemon at a time, which means the highest base power this could be is 200. Which is still very high, right? Like, the most powerful move of last format was Charizard, or GMX Charizard's GMX Wildfire. Now that had a bunch of other special boosts to it as well, like Sun and Solar Power on Life Orb, but very powerful moves, right? And like, GMX Charizard tore through things with a 150 base power move, sometimes weaker. This thing with the potential to have a 200 base power move could very easily clean up at the end of a game. So, not as broken as it is in singles. I don't think it will make nearly as much of an impact as it did in singles, but I still think it's usable, right? So now let's talk about some potential sets for this one. The first set I want to talk about is like just a fast sand support, right? So you can run like leftovers on this, or you can run like a mental herb. Really, it's up to you. You run Sand Rush because you're running it on sand. And like for your fast support Mon, you want Will-O-Wisp so you can get in, break the physical attackers before they can do anything. You want Snarl because you're fast and you can kill the special attackers before they do anything. You want Charm. You run Charm if you want to really kill physical attackers that can't be statused. Or if you want to run Scary Face. For speed control, like, personally, this is what I would do. And then for your last move, you can choose between like Last Respects, you can choose between Play Rough, or you can go Body Press, right? me, myself, and I'd run body press here. That's just me. You could Terra into fight with this mod if you really wanted to, like a defensive fighting Terra. And then like at level 50, like the fastest viable Pokemon I think we have in the format, it may have been Dragapult. There might be something faster now, but you only need like 108 speed to outspeed Dragapult. Assuming I'm doing basic math right. Actually, that may be more optimal. Yeah, that's more optimal. So like that's like the baseline speed you would need on a Sand Rush set if you want to outspeed Dragapult, because I think that is the fastest thing we have available to us. Doesn't count. I'm sorry, it doesn't count. Yeah, so Dragapult is the fastest thing we have available to us. And that's like the minimum speed you need to outspeed Dragapult. If you want to outspeed other things that are like Choice Scarf Pokemon, you could run more speed, but as a baseline, you need that speed. Next, you want to run into. I want to talk about the sand offensive, right? You can run like Life Orb on this set. You could run Spell Tag. You could run Jesus. You could run Choice Band. You could run Choice Scarf. You can run all sorts of items on because the point is you're fast and you're getting damage off, right? And so on your fast set, you want Protect, not Teleport. Protect, Last Respects, or Shadow Sneak, either or. I'd run Last Respects because you're already fast. You don't necessarily need Shadow Sneak. You could run Shadow Sneak on this. You could also run Play Rough, and then you could run Body Press, right? Like that'd be your pretty standard like sand offensive set. We're gonna throw this on here, and again, like you only need 108 speed with. You only really need the 108 speed on this one. The next set I want to talk about is like a bulky support mon, or a bulky support set, which makes use of Fluffy. Again, you could run Mental Herb, you could technically run Rocky Helmet on this set, or Lefties, either or. You run Fluffy for the increased defense, and because you're slower, you're running Will-O-Wisp. So I think on like a slower set, you could get some use out of Helping Hand, because you're not so much using it, like a slow bulky support set, you're not so much using it to hinder the opponent, you're using it to bolster yourself. You run Yawn. Boy, I cannot spell. But Will-O-Wisp, Helping Hand, Yawn, and then like again, an attacking move of your choice. You could do Shadow Sneak, you could do basically the same coverage, like the same offensive options as the fast support mon, Body Press, Last Respects, or Shadow Sneak. On the slower version, I might actually run Shadow Sneak just so you can get in. It's like if it's your Houndstone at a few HP left versus the opponent's Pokemon at a few HP left, and you're running a slow bulky support, like that's going to be useful for tying up endgames versus opponents that just have to be chipped. Or chipping to break sashes and whatnot is also useful for your you could use Shadow Sneak to chip and break the potential sashes or potential sturdies on the offensive mon that your opponent has. The next that I want to talk about is like a bulky tail room offense, right? Where you get Protect, Last Respect, Jesus. It's basically the same set as this, but with Fluffy, right? Same set as this with Fluffy. You still run the speed because under Sand or under Tailwind, you're faster. This is the wrong set. This set. Under Tailwind, you're faster, but you're with Fluffy. Under Tailwind, you're faster. Under Tailwind, you're faster than slow mons. Under Trick Room, you're slower than fast mons, and against Trick Room, you're faster than the Trick Room mons, right? And then you could make this mon work with like, why do I have this? You can make the offensive sets work with like an Assault Vest or a Choice Scarf. You just switch Protect out for like an extra move. Terra Blast if you really wanted to, and run like Terra Steel. So yeah, that's about like all for this mon. It's definitely not nearly as broken as it was in singles. I think it can still be useful. Like, it's kind of unfortunate for this mon that in order to have like a usable stab that's not 50 base power, you do have to take a sack. But it has a great support moveset, it has a great offensive moveset. I think this could be a really versatile mon in VGC 2023. And yeah, so I think that's actually all I got for this one. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. I'm trying to post one of these daily. And question of the day, just let me know what kind of content you'd be interested in seeing in the future. Obviously, I'll run out of mons eventually, and I don't know what I'm doing after this, so let me know. Peace.